Hello, kia ora, I'm Philip Duncan and thank you for joining us for our special 10-day outlook across New Zealand. We've got high and low pressure in the mix, and in fact next week looks very autumn-like for a time with a bit of a storm passing across the South Island. Let's kick off though with the animated wind map for today, Monday, and low pressure up here sort of in the northwestern side of the country. It's about to expand across New Zealand as high pressure out here to the east moves away, and the next main high is really south of Australia. There is some high pressure in the Tasman Sea, but with the low here and this one here, it's about to disappear. So let's take a look at the cloud. We've got a fair bit of cloud and sort of showery weather around the country. This shows just how messy the next 24 hours is. The white blobs are cloud, the blue blobs are rain. You see some clear skies here returning to the top of the country later tomorrow, maybe a bit more around the northwest and western side of the South Island as well. So a lot of the cloudy and wet weather shifts to the eastern side as we go through tomorrow. Let's have a look at the next 48 hours of rainfall. Kicks off in the North Island, then starts to develop across the South Island through Wednesday. So we've got heavier falls up here in the northeastern corner, a few isolated heavier falls across the North Island in that sort of 10 to 25 millimetre mark. And then in the South Island, we'll see some showers forming mostly inland, thanks to that easterly breeze coupled with some daytime heating. So Tuesday looks like this. Low pressure pretty much dominates the whole country, but it is not a very deep low. So therefore, rain around the Chatham Islands and that easterly flow into the South Island's eastern side. So you will see some showers, drizzle patches turning to sort of heavier downpours into the afternoon, especially inland, and then that moves up the South Island as we go through Tuesday. And you can also see the westerly winds up here, bit of a change from the subtropical winds you've been having. By Wednesday, more of a southerly flow for the North Island, southerlies into Wellington, much welcome rain and showers into the capital, Waited Upper and surrounding regions, but it won't be a huge amount. Places like Marlborough, you may not get much, if anything, just a bit of drizzle around and low cloud. Eastern coastal areas, that's where you're more likely to see the rain. Kaikoura down to about Christchurch, into some wet weather there. Check our website and app to drill down deeper on the chances of rain and just how much you might get. If it's below 10 millimetres, don't get too excited. By Thursday, high pressure pretty much in charge of the country. A couple of showers remaining in northern Hawke's Bay, a couple maybe lingering to the very northeastern side there, or eastern side of the north, I should say. Otherwise dry around the country with lighter winds. And by Friday, pretty much the same as well, but one change. Nor'westers out of Australia, and that means the temperatures along the eastern and southern parts are about to lift up. This cold front, pretty weak, not expected to deliver much in the way of wet weather. As we go on towards Saturday, the leftovers of it remain here. So a bit of wet weather moves up the west coast, maybe a little bit into Southland. I wouldn't think it's going to be much. And there might be an isolated shower or two in central areas, but nothing too big. The high is just here to the north. So, pretty much keeping the winds mild northwest for many places. So it's not going to be a cold Saturday, at least not in northern and eastern areas. Now, as we get into Sunday, I was mentioning about how we see more of an autumn weather pattern kicking in once March arrives. This looks more like autumn now. One of the key things you'll notice as we go through the next couple of months, there are big breaks in the highs. So over summer, one high there, the next one was here, the next one, they all sort of line up. But when I step off the screen, high pressure well out to the east and the next one well out to our west, which means this whole area is full of low pressure. Now there is high pressure to the north here, very typical of El Nino, stops the tropical lows from coming down, but it's going to encourage, in this placement, windy westerlies. So look at 1 week from now, bit of a storm on the way. Welcome to autumn. Low pressure potentially down to the 970s. It's not locked in this far out. And with high pressure to the north here, that makes for a windy burst of weather coming through. A squash zone across the country along with a storm, which means windy to gale force, severe gales right across the country if this map proves true. On top of that, there will be some rain. Now that's the good news, right? You see rain falling in western areas of both main islands. Won't be a huge amount for the east, but even places like Marlborough and Nelson could see a bit of rain by next Monday. Here's hoping we can lock this in a couple more days' time. A week out, it could still move a wee bit. So don't get too excited if you need rain, but there is a chance certainly next week. And then on Tuesday, the front moves by, windy sou'westers right across the country. So that means more showers. But if you live in the east or the northeast, You know, a sou'wester doesn't usually bring in a lot of wet weather for you, but there are some chances of rain briefly. And even if it's not falling where you need it, there might be rain up in the mountains and hills. Places like Marlborough could really do with those rivers getting a bit more water into them. So unsettled as we go through next week, but look what happens by the middle of next week. In comes the high. So just a few showers, pretty light ones, hugging the western coastline, dry in the east, warming back up again if you're down here around Otago and Southland. And our final map for Thursday of next week shows another big high right over us. But like I was saying, as we move further into March and April, bigger gaps between the highs. So, you know, centered over the Tasman, the next one way off in the Indian Ocean, which means there is low pressure in the middle here, and that will all be drifting towards us. So a bit more uncertainty. That's not a bad thing if you need rain. It's good to see the forecast a little more mixed up than it's been. But let's take a look now at the 10-day rainfall map. Now, this is just a sort of a snapshot of the models today. What you're seeing is some heavy rain up here, which we talked about before, potentially up to 100 millimetres. Some heavy falls around Mount Ruapehu and National Park area over towards northern Taranaki. And then the rest of it is on the west coast. So that shading and that sort of darker red purple puts you up around the 60 to 100 millimetre mark. But the eastern side, including Nelson and Marlborough, and a big part of coastal Canterbury, you might get some heavier falls inland, is putting you down around the blues and the greens, so 5 to 10 millimetres. The only thing that breaks that 5 to 10 millimetre is an isolated downpour or thunderstorm. That is still possible. So stay optimistic if you need some rain, but certainly pretty dry in the areas that are dry now. But there is some relief in other parts of the country. So it's not all bad news at the moment. We do have some rain on the way, but as I've been saying for the last week or so, hit and miss. Not everyone is getting the relief you need, but some certainly are. That is all from me. See you again tomorrow, Tuesday, with our next update.